apprenticing with a guy who does body art. Something I could split with his dad. I toy with my E-frame, considering the idea. Calling Griffin would mean hearing his voice, hoarse with salt air and sadness, and trying to keep my heart from breaking to pieces all over again. Remember the times on the roof, under the stars? They don't have stars here. You can hardly see the streetlights for all the smog. It would mean trying, failing, not to get angry at him for leaving. How can I ask him for money? I haven't exactly been his biggest supporter lately. Or I guess the better question is, how much does he really owe me? Brixney? You know what, Brixney? I turned to find Mr. One red-faced with disapproval, hands pressed together under his chin. Did you pay for those ice cream nuggets? He's pleading with God that it be true. They're melting. They're making a mess of the walk-in. I point at an ice cream puddle leaking onto the refrigerated floor. And you're taking initiative, and that's great. He hunches his shoulders. He's practically bowing to me. But eating food that belongs to the store and not to you? That's a fast ticket to scraping the seat of your pants on the pavement outside the door. Know what I mean? I mean when I fire you. Okay, well, don't fire me. I go into a hot sweat. My stomach rejects the aesthetics of cold ice cream mixed with fiery panic. I'm just eating ice cream nuggets that we're allowed to neither sell nor toss. Basically, what I'm eating is trash. Except that if you were eating trash, he winces in an exaggerated way, as if pained on my behalf. It'd be because you were on the streets without a job. Without this job, specifically. My face muscles spasm a little. I bend down on pretense of examining the leaking box. I think I can staunch this. I'll staunch this mess, and then the nuggets can stay here in the box. Yeah, I'll get on that. I nod vigorously, partly to underscore my initiative, and partly to shake out the muscle tics. Great. Mr. One turns to go. And I'll tell Lola to take care of the tourist type who's been sitting in your section for a full 5 minutes without being greeted. What? No, not my tourist. Lola will have used him all up by the time I get out there. I shove a couple of reams of processed cheese into the leaky box and hurry out to tell Lola that my tourist is not for human consumption. St. Professor catches me first. He's come right up to the mold bar to talk to me. I want ice cream nuggets added to my order, he says. You didn't tell me those were available. They're not. I saw you eating them. I saw on your feed. He saw me eating them? Since when is there a camera in the walk-in? Stupid Mr. One and his apparently rational fear of inventory pilfering. We have ice cream nuggets, I admit, but I'm not allowed to serve them. You're hoarding them for yourself because they've been discontinued. I'm not allowed to give them to you, I tell St. Professor, unless you are a non-profit organization that does not serve the economically disadvantaged. St. Professor frowns in confusion. He slowly shakes his head. I don't think you've been properly trained at all. I break away from him and make for my tourist. Lola's squinting at him from a distance, trying to center his face in her E-frame, as if that'll help pull up his non-existent profile. My section, I hiss at Lola. I dart over to the tourist's booth and say in my most alluring voice, What is it you're looking for? He looks up at me with an expression as open as the middle of the ocean. I'm waiting for a friend, he says. Then, with his head tilted to one side, This place was different last time I came here. I glance at the colorful banners slung everywhere. Yeah, we're doing a promo for Feedbin. I can get you confused teen can't find his car if you want. He swipes his shaggy hair out of his face, giving me a clear view of eyes the deep green color of murky lake water. No, I mean this place used to be some kind of sandwich shop. I can't place his accent. He speaks slowly, like he's having trouble getting all the consonants out. With spicy peppers, I guess, that hurt your mouth if you ate a lot of them. Oh, yeah. Spicy peppers are like that, aren't they? I glance back at Lola, who's watching our feed on her E-frame. I shoot her a look that says, "What's up with this guy?" So, teen doing his confused thing, that okay for you? Yes. You want a flavor gel? Yes. I wait for him to tell me which kind. He looks at me blankly for a moment. Are his eyes green or brown? And then hurries to pull something out of his pocket. He hands me a silver coin stamped with what looks like a two-headed elephant. We don't accept Cambodian currency here, I tell him. You could melt it down, he offers. I stare at him. He's messing with me. I give him a knowing smirk. I think I've got just the thing for you. I come back with what Lola and I have dubbed Banana Split the Check. A mountain of banana-gelled flavor foam topped with crumbled Oreos and graham cracker bits. She and I often make it and split the deduction from our paychecks, hence the name. Clever, right? I usually throw in some ice cream nuggets, too. But looks like that tradition has just gone out alongside privacy in the walk-in. I find it disquieting to eat faces, I tell the tourist, as I slide into the booth with the banana split. Mr. One doesn't mind if we sit with the customers. He encourages it, especially if the customer is good-looking, and doesn't mind staging an argument or make-out session. It brings in more customers. I'm not planning on staging either, but Mr. One doesn't need to know that. The tourist digs in with all the self-consciousness of a 5-year-old. Do you like it? I ask. So far it's not burning my mouth at all, he reports. I'll tell my manager to start printing that on the cups. He gulps down big puffs of glossy yellow foam. So what's your name? I ask, leaning in like I'm breathless to hear the answer. He pauses for a suspicious length of time. Michael. He plows on through more banana split. False name. No profile. I'm guessing he's old money. Probably owns a couple of castles that his parents are trying to hide from gold diggers like me. I'll try not to let that discourage me. I'm Bricks. I glance at a tattered notebook on the table. A name is inked on the cover. Dylan. Who's Dylan? I ask, wondering if that's this guy's real name after all. My friend, Michael says. He nods at the notebook. I brought this to give back to him. Oh, right, you're supposed to meet someone. Is he as cute as you? I give him the obligatory conspiratorial wink. He actually considers how to answer that. I'm more attractive. Perfectly earnest. No need to waste time with false humility, right? I hold back a laugh. So where is this friend? I don't know. I haven't seen him in ages. He once told me he comes to this sandwich shop every summer. Longest day of the year. He comes here with his brother Hunter, and they eat the spicy peppers until one of them throws up. And it's always him, Dylan, who throws up, so his brother gets to be the one who goes out in the kayak first. But as long as I've been coming, Dylan has never showed. I pause, trying to take that all in. Are you serious? You come here every summer hoping to run into him? And now it's not even a sandwich shop? In his defense, he has no idea I've been trying to get in touch with him. I just figure he must be missing his notebook. It was important to him. He uses his fingertips to straighten the cover. Why don't you look him up on your E-frame? I pull mine out of my pocket. I can type in his name and you can send him an instant message. I don't know his full name. Just first name, Dylan. His shoulders sink. I don't know where he lives. I don't know his E-frame ID. Sounds like you two are close friends. His shoulders drop farther. He was in love with my sister. Is that a good thing or a bad thing? I ask, because he seems a little mopey about it. It didn't really work out well, in the end. But no hard feelings? I hope not. I meant for you, dork. Hey, happy endings are overrated. I mean, unless you're in a movie. He looks at me out of the corner of his eye, like he doesn't agree. I fidget with my E-frame. How's the banana foam? He points his spoon at what's left. I really like it. I can see why this place isn't a sandwich shop anymore. Sandwiches aren't as photogenic. I point to the little camera mounted on the napkin dispenser. At the same time, the giant screen over the mold bar cuts to a shot of us sitting together. I lean farther into the frame. Gosh, we make a cute couple. What with my endearingly bedraggled appearance, and his broad, your troubles fit on my shoulders. I'm on your TV, Michael says, frozen. Our TV and everyone else's. Well, anyone who's tuned to my feed. He's still frozen, his spoon poised like an exclamation mark. Don't worry, I say. Until an ad pops up, you know nobody much is watching. Takes a few thousand viewers for that to happen. Hey, pretty face, calls a boy from a crowded booth. In my section. Crap. How about we order now? I slide out of the booth. Don't go anywhere, I tell Michael. He shovels the last spoonfuls of Oreo crumbs into his mouth, like he's getting ready to leave. And darn it if I don't want to raid his wallet and figure out his story. I'll get you another banana split, I tell him. Just don't leave. The boys in the booth wear varsity jackets from the school I briefly attended when I first moved into my future. I recognize one of them from my old math class. He leans back in the booth to look me over. He has a nice haircut. Brandon would look good with that haircut. Didn't you go to our school? He asks me. What happened to you? Solving quadratic equations doesn't pay as much as it used to. I smile so the sarcasm will go over easier. He doesn't match my smile. In fact, he looks genuinely concerned. He scratches his shoulder self-consciously, showing off an unfortunate t-shirt tan, stark white underneath his sleeve. The sight of it makes me relax. Here's a guy who isn't trying for perfection. He probably wouldn't mind if I swam in the lake in cutoffs and a t-shirt instead of the swimsuit I don't own. Would he care that I live in a debtor's colony? I train my eyes on the table. How about ordering? His friends have their E-frames out and are browsing feeds. Whose pants are on my head? One boy says. Excuse me? As far as I can see, there are no pants on his head. Tell your dog to stop laughing at me, another boy says, and they all break into guffaws. Tell him to shut up. They're quoting feeds, the boy from math class explains, pointing at the sleek silvery E-frames in their hands. Seriously, why don't you go to school anymore? Didn't you win that math bowl? Yeah, I remember my friends all used your feed to cheat off your algebra homework. He smiles sheepishly. Adorable. But what am I supposed to tell him? I dropped out. I'm a dropout. I'll give you another minute to decide. I turn away and hurry to the back of the store. In a spot where the kitchen steam makes it hard for Mr. One to spy on me, I pull out my E-frame and find Griffin's feed. He's grimacing at the sun and the wind streaming into his face while he crouches on the Santa Monica pier. A couple of co-eds stand before him, naked from the waist up, but for a thick layer of body paint that has transformed their torsos into suburban landscapes. Painted sparrows perch on their collarbones. Griffin looks cramped from all the crouching, but otherwise happy. Does he ever think about his dad toiling on cleanup crew to shave dollars off his debt? Does he ever think of me, working swing shifts alone? I remember us at the lake together late at night. Tourists gone, locals calling to each other in the dark like birds. Griffin collecting empty beer bottles to balance on the rocks by the shore, making crazy silhouettes. Because Griffin never thinks of trash as trash. "Sometimes I forget I'm stuck here," he would say on the roof of my future, or down in the empty pool, where we'd hide from our cleaning assignments. "Sometimes I think we're just hanging out." He'd pull me close, and I would smile, because rooftops and empty pools can be just like living rooms and back porches, depending on who you're with. My E-frame trills at me. Brandon's calling. "Hey, Brandon." His pale face and overlong hair come into view. I can tell he's having a bad day. I mean, an especially bad one. The kind that can't be fixed by hunting down the rec room's missing ping-pong balls and bouncing them off the walls until they're missing again. Our favorite pastime. "Hey," he says. "Bad news. Toilets clogged again? Brandon, I cannot share my bedroom with a bowl full of cess. They're moving me today. End of the day." "What?" "We're transferring to Debtor's house." All the blood drains from my head. "That's shit. They said we had until the end of the month." Brandon shrugs, but his brown eyes are full of despair. "What does it really matter, Bricks? End of the month? End of the day? You have a secret inheritance I don't know about?" I rub a hand over my forehead. The smell of bananas and graham crackers makes me feel sick. "You don't have to come with me," Brandon says quietly. "I'm just going to leave you? Just let it get worse and worse for you? Doesn't he get that I've lost enough family already? Doesn't he know that I look the other way every morning so he can put his stupid bacon on my plate? I don't even like bacon." "You're no heartthrob, Brandon. You'll never be able to use your feed to get out." "I've got good hair," he says, hurt. "Good when I cut it." "Your eyes are too close together. And nobody watches nice guys like you on Feedbin. Nobody cares that you fold my laundry or that you line up all my origami foil on your windowsill." "Get a place with Lola, work the night shift, and go back to school," Brandon says. "That would be worth it to me, living in a colony. As long as I know you're getting somewhere. And I could come visit you on Thanksgiving so you could update me on your shuffleboard score and introduce me to your 7 roommates. Great, Brandon. Great idea." I choke back a sob. "How much do we need to prevent a transfer?" 10,000. My head feels as if it's detaching from the rest of my body. It's floating away. I can't feel my teeth. $10,000? "There's nothing we can do, Bricks." He's full of sympathy, his brow creased with concern. For me, the idiot. He's the one who can't get out. I think back to the day. The big day at the hospital. That black pit day when we said goodbye to our parents and took them off the machines. Brandon held my hand, and I held Mom's limp hand, and we told Dad we'd never sell his big screen or forget to feed the cat. And we said goodbye. Because there was nothing we could do. Screw that. "We have until the end of the day," I tell Brandon. "Put some sunglasses over those beady eyes of yours and start playing to the camera." Even as I say it, a Sunglass Shack icon pops up in the corner of my screen. Our drama is increasing the hits on Brandon's feed. But that's not going to last. Pity is entertaining for only so long. I march out to St. Professor's table and press my hand over the camera mounted in the napkin dispenser. "You want ice cream nuggets? You know what discontinued means? It means you'll never see those nuggets again. Unless you're willing to pay good." St. Professor goes silent with shock. He fidgets with his cartoon tie, the same way my dad fidgeted with his own tie when a salesman came to our door and offered to install cameras in our house so we could explore the exciting world of profitable family drama. I still wonder what would have happened if Dad had said yes. Whether Brandon and I could have saved ourselves from this mess by letting people watch us scramble to keep ourselves out of a debtor's colony. But Dad would never have said yes. Sincerity facilitates meaningful connection, he always said. No, Dad. Financial solvency facilitates meaningful connection. Also, being alive so you can care for your children instead of saddling them with your debt. That would facilitate a meaningful connection, too. I've got 7 boxes in the back, I tell St. Professor. You think about how much you're willing to pay for those boxes, and it's going to include that notebook in your pocket. I'll be back in a few minutes. I leave him boggle-eyed and swing by the booth of boys from my school. You ordering or not? Because if you're not, I'm going to give your table to that business type in the lobby over there who looks like she wouldn't mind getting into a screaming match with me if it meant increasing advertising for her company. The guy from math class lifts his eyebrows. He seems duly impressed with me. What are you doing when you get off work? He asks. Want to go to the lake? I form an image of me dangling my bare feet over the side of a dock, sharing a bag of pretzels with a decent-looking guy who appreciates me less for my taste in tight jeans and more for my ability to win a math bowl and chew out obnoxious customers. But then I come back to reality, assess his scuffed-up sneakers, and decide sharing a nice moment with a middle-class local isn't going to keep Brandon off the bus to Debtor's house. Sorry, can't, I say. I'm aware of a sharp pain centering in my solar plexus. I suck it up. I cover the nearest camera with my hand and convince his friends to give me double tips for sneaking them beer-injected foam. Then I go back to Michael's table with another banana split. A couple of preteen girls have come in from the expo and are huddled a few feet away, recording Michael with their E-frames. I take a deep breath, plaster on a perky smile, and slide into his booth. So, I say, your friend left his notebook behind and your conscience won't let you rest until you return it. Michael picks dried foam off the table. He didn't mean to leave it. The croak in his voice tells me he's only hoping it's true. I flip open the faded cover and find a scrawled line of text. You will find the other place when you look for what is lost. Underneath that is a title written larger. Stories of the Girl Queen. Michael touches the page, runs a finger over the dents left by the pen. They're all about my sister. She's not really a queen or anything. Darn, so he's not foreign royalty. She's the one your friend Dylan was in love with? I flip through pages covered in dense handwriting. How come your sister's not the one trying to return it? Year after year after year. Because I'm the one who wants him to have it back, he says into the plate of banana split. When he left, well, it was my fault. I thought maybe if I give this back to him, I don't know. I just feel like I owe it to him. His murky lake eyes go murkier with some particular brand of sadness. Lamenting a lost friendship, or more likely, guilty about how things ended. I feel like brushing his hair back, patting him on the head, telling him it'll be all right. But then a heavy weight drops into my stomach. Because what are the chances this Dylan guy is going to show up after all these years? My mind goes to Brandon and this funny thing he does. I'll be God, you be Adam, he says. We imitate the figures on the Sistine Chapel. I lounge with my hand barely outstretched, like lazy Adam on his hill. Brandon plays God, straining forward, reaching for my hand with an eager index finger. I'd like to tell Michael, you're God, and this Dylan guy is Adam. Michael eyes the girls huddled nearby. They're filming me. Don't look so surprised. You're a good-looking guy. I reach across the table and rest my fingertips against his arm. He looks down at my hand, up at me. His expression darkens. That's not going to end well, he says in a low voice. I pull back, flooded with embarrassment. I can't meet his gaze. He's not stupid. He knows when a girl's trying to get into his wallet. I glance at the girls who are filming us with their E-frames. A few more have joined them. I think of Brandon and his kind, beady eyes that no one wants to see on camera. Look, Michael, I say. We both need something. I need money to keep my brother and me from being transferred from a rat-hole debtor's colony to an even worse rat-hole debtor's colony. And you need to get your friend's attention so he'll come down here and ease whatever's weighing on your conscience. Michael forgets about the second banana split. You see those girls over there? I continue. They might be able to help us both. The more cameras that are on us, the closer you and I get to what we want. He thinks it over. His breath goes fluttery with anxiety. So what do we do? What would Lola do in this situation? No, I don't think I'm up for what Lola would do. I'm not that desperate. Well, not yet. I'll see what I can come up with on my own first. You could start by unraveling the mystery. Why no profile? Are you a young presidential hopeful trying to keep your reputation unsullied? Or maybe a modern-day vampire? You've got a reflection, but no camera presence. Michael lowers his head and peers up at me. Try something weirder. Weirder? I get a feeling like soda fizzing up through a flavor foam mold. He glances at the girls tittering nearby with their E-frames held out. Touch my arm again, he tells me. I give him a questioning look, but slide my hand over his forearm. His skin has the warm, dry feel of someone who spends his days in the sun and takes his dinner on the veranda. No, Michael says. I mean, touch it. I am. The soft grit of lake silt left over from a morning swim, the tickle of downy hair. Michael shakes his head. You're not. You think you are, but you're not. I look at my hand on his arm, and then glance at the cameras. What exactly is he going for? Michael, my hand is right here on your arm. But even as I say it, I realize he's right. There's my hand, and there's his arm underneath it, but now I don't actually feel anything. No silt, no sun-warmed skin, nothing. It's like my fingers are hovering a millimeter above his arm. I press down, hard. Still nothing. We're magnets with repelling poles. What the hell? I say. What's going on? He pulls his arm away. He huddles in his corner of the booth. Maybe this isn't such a good idea after all. I frown at him. Frown at my hand. Flex my fingers. What just happened? As quickly as my confusion spikes, it recedes, like a flame suddenly smothered with a blanket. His arm is not repellent. That was an illusion. Chalk it up to the power of suggestion. He hunches like a wounded animal. I reach to touch him again, to show him there are no hard feelings about his weird trick. He leans away. Boy, he's moody. I'll go get some soda, I say, and slide out of the booth. The cluster of girls has thickened. I have to elbow my way past them to get to the kitchen. Another flicker of confusion distracts me as I'm filling the cup at the root beer dispenser. Was I touching Michael's arm, or wasn't I? Lola bounds into the kitchen and says, "That guy is gold. Did you tell him to say all those weird things?" He came preloaded with a script, I joke. Here, take this. Lola holds up Dylan's notebook. She must have swiped it from Michael's table. Tell him he can only have it back if he pays you for it, and then let him decide how to pay you. Says the other one from where he's fixing the jammed dishwasher. I yank the notebook away from Lola. Very classy. And find a way to bring me into this, she says. Tell him I'm willing to pose as his sister. Tell him I can cry on cue. I'll just stick some hot chili-flavored gel in my eye. That's not a great idea about the hot chili gel, the other one says, circling his eyes with an index finger. I walk out before they can give me any more suggestions. As I head back to Michael's booth, I riffle the pages of the notebook with my free hand. I notice a passage underlined in red ink. Here you go. I hand the root beer to Michael. More sugar, to calm your nerves. He takes a long pull from the straw. I swear he's putting out misery and guilt like radio signals. I open the notebook to the underlined section, then backtrack a bit to figure out the context. It seems a boy has discovered his lost pet rabbit in a magical wood, and is pretty unsettled by the changes it's gone through. It had been an ordinary rabbit, but now it can talk and think, and appreciate clever riddles, and can't very well be a pet anymore. I may not be your kind of rabbit anymore, a tame, huddled kind of rabbit. You might not like me as I am, a wild one who knows the smell of leaf litter and the give of pine needle carpets. You cannot understand a rabbit that will not shy from cold, open, loud, who will not be touched by human hands. No, I am not your garden cage rabbit anymore. Is it enough to know me from a distance, since that is the only way we can meet? Or will you leave me now and never return? Pretty heavy for a story about a magic rabbit. You underlined this? I ask Michael. He nods, twists away so he doesn't have to read the writing. This is why he wants to return the book, so Dylan will read this part. What's the deal with the rabbit? He changed and the boy couldn't handle it? Something like that, Michael mumbles. What does that have to do with Dylan? Michael looks down. I'm not the person he thought I was. Want to tell me what happened between you two? I ask quietly, but not so quietly the mic can't pick me up. Michael bends the end of his straw back and forth, sucks in a long breath. He showed up in the woods behind our house 9 years ago, and immediately decided he was in love with my older sister. I think she liked him too, really liked him. His gaze flicks to the girls watching him. He turns away from them, but they just shuffle into a better viewing position. I thought he was fascinating. He could make a fort out of anything. He made up stories I only half understood, but could listen to for hours. He said, "This is how brothers should be." Then it all started falling apart. He started to realize. His voice falters. He clears his throat. What? The straw's going to break the way he's bending it. Do you ever feel like you know things about a person you couldn't possibly know? That you can sense something about them? You mean like if a guy's planning his future with you, but you get the sense he's really going to leave you to learn how to paint perfect circles around other girls' belly buttons? If only. Look at me, Michael says. I drag my gaze to Michael's face, and see only worry. That I won't understand him, maybe? It makes lines around his eyes in an intricate pattern I'd like to transcribe. With me, you see what you want to see, he says. Attractive, harmless, whatever. But this isn't what I really look like. It's all an illusion. His voice cracks. Dylan figured that out, and he couldn't get over it. I try to follow what he's saying, but I'm flooded with confusion again. I can influence the way you see me, Michael says, and I lift my eyebrows. I can influence the way you feel. I think back to the way I felt a minute ago, utterly confused and then suddenly not. But that wasn't Michael's doing. That was me sorting things out. I'm pretty sure that was me sorting things out. So you can make me attracted to you even if I'm not? I ask him with a teasing smirk. If you're hoping to have an attractive customer, then that's how you'll see me. I lean back and study him, trying to figure out if he's just having fun with me or if he really believes what he's saying. It's true that he's everything I'd expect from a rich out-of-towner. The golden complexion, the wind-tangled hair. But the eyes are all wrong. Not enough boredom, not enough arrogance, not nearly enough eagerness to look down my low-cut shirt. I cross my arms. What do you really look like then? I could show you, but you wouldn't understand. Why not? I say with a disbelieving snort. The cluster of girls has turned into a horde, all hanging on Michael's words. Michael notices. He looks to the door. Because I'm too different from you. The lines around his eyes get deeper. I'm not from around here. A teenage girl steps past our booth and brushes her hand along Michael's shoulder. He flinches at the touch. She scurries on, staring at her hand, no doubt asking herself if her fingers truly made contact. Where are you from? I ask Michael. Another girl walks by and whisks her hand through his hair, giggling. Michael blanches, and I want to shout at the girl. I don't want to do this, he tells me. He braces to scoot out of the booth, and my heart seizes. I'm sorry. I know you need money. I've heard about debtors' colonies. Who hasn't? Anyone who's ever browsed Feedbin has seen inside one. The TV screen cuts to a new feed. My face fills the frame. A younger, more plaintive version of my face. Mr. One, master manipulator, is controlling the feed from the booth. Michael freezes, eyes on the replay of my flavor foam training. I look panicked and desperate, clenching the trigger of the flavor foam gun like I'm hoping dollar bills will shoot out. You want Dylan to come here, don't you? I ask Michael, trying to lay it on thick so he'll stay. You want him to see that you're here waiting for him. Michael sinks back into the booth. He turns to me, sad-eyed, and nods. I force down a wave of embarrassment at his pitying expression. Michael fidgets with the cover of the notebook. Dylan could do what I can do. Influence people. And he could see things no one else saw. He figured out how to use this special ability that not many people can use. A vorpal, he called it. A vorpal? He said it was from a poem. Jabberwocky. That crazy mess of a poem, written by a mathematician, so maybe there's hope yet for my poetry skills. He used it to find the place where I'm from. The place where you're from, I echo, utterly lost. He looks up, his lake-water eyes startlingly green. Another world. Another universe. That's when I notice it's not just teenage girls gathered around our booth. It's their moms. Some annoyed at the delay in heading home from the FeedCon Expo. Some just as riveted as their daughters. It's also college boys, a middle-aged man in an expo uniform, the cashier from the shop next door, and a couple of elderly women from the salon across the plaza. Most are dutifully pointing E-frames at Michael and me, and glancing at the TV screen now and then to see if it's their camera providing the current view of our restaurant. And in the corner of the screen, 3 different logos for 3 different companies advertise on my feed. My palms sweat. My tired calves quiver. It's working. I must have made hundreds of dollars already. Maybe even 1,000. All because Michael is convinced there's something wrong with him. All because he's so crazy. This Dylan guy cut out and is never coming back. He's never coming back, is he? He knows Michael is crazy, and he might feel sorry for him, but he's not driving out here just to get back a cheap notebook, or to hear Michael's jumbled explanations. People don't come back just because you want them to. Even if they owe you. Even if you owe them. People don't come back. Pain blossoms in my gut. Somewhere, Griffin's standing on a pier, paint speckled in the wind. Missing me like crazy. But he's not coming back. I look at Michael, at the crowd pressing in around him. He doesn't get it. He can't understand. His angst isn't buying Dylan's forgiveness. It's only giving people something to gape at, adding a feed to the bin. Mr. One will probably make a mold of Hottie convinced he's an alien, and then he'll loop footage of Michael's misery for teens and tourists. I know how that goes. I search Lola among the crowd. The other one is trying to be discreet about wrestling the chili-tinted flavor gel gun away from her. She's got a gun, I tell the crowd, and point to Lola. They shriek and scatter. Come on. I pull Michael out of the booth and around the long way to the kitchen. Through here. I open the back door, which leads out to an alley lined with dumpsters. Michael. I put my hand on his shoulder. It's okay. You don't have to tell me any more. Leave the notebook here. I'll give it to Dylan if he comes. But he won't. He's gone. You're pining for nothing. The words sink deep into some pit inside of me. Already, some of the crowd has found us. A string of girls follows us into the alley, armed with outstretched E-frames. Mr. One appears, his expression entreating me to come back inside and use flavor foam as a backdrop for my conversation. Just go, I plead with Michael. But your money, Michael says. You need the money. I'll be fine. This'll be at the top of feed bin for ages. Or a day, maybe. Or an hour. Not enough time to make $10,000. But enough to delay a transfer a little longer. Maybe. If my future's feeling generous. He senses my hesitation. He looks at the girls with their E-frame cameras. Let me show you, Michael says to me, so you can understand. I'd like to understand. I really would. I'd like to understand why a guy like Michael would bother waiting year after year for someone who left and probably never looked back. I'd like to know why people leave in the first place, even when they love you, even when they owe it to you to stay. But all I really understand is that people have all kinds of debts between them that are never going to get paid. You don't owe me anything, I tell Michael. Michael's lined face is a maze of anxiety and disappointment. Just let me show you. It doesn't make any sense, I say. You look perfectly normal to me. You feel perfectly normal. I move my hand down to grip his. He grips back. I'll show you. And then I'm not holding his hand, and I'm not looking into his face. I'm sensing him with something other than my eyes or my skin. His face is not a normal face, but a screen of flickering images, a loose collection of colors, like dust motes caught in a shaft of light. His hand is warmth and light and energy, but nothing solid. He's a cloud. And then he's back to normal, back to real. His lake water eyes search mine, but how can he expect to find anything there other than shock and disbelief and confusion? And I hope not revulsion. I really hope not. I told you it wouldn't end well, he says. Do you believe me now? Overhead, the tufted clouds are hands of loose molecules reaching for each other, stretching and stretching. Happy endings are for the movies, I say. He smiles. The first smile I've seen on him. And it looks good. He hands me Dylan's notebook. Then he turns toward a shimmering wave of heat, roiling up from the cement, and he steps through it, and he's gone. I feel the horde of viewers at my back. I sense 1,000,000 clicks on Feedbin as my revenue rockets up to 10,000 and more.
Three. When we went high concept, 30 years from now. Epony. Cole and I come from a town in Iowa with one main road, one way in and one way out. He was Colburn then. Now he's Cole. They made him do that. Any time I walked past his house, his chickens would follow me to the edge of the yard, like I was their mother hen. They were partial to me. I understood the feeling. More than once during the summer I was 16, I found myself following the siren strum of Cole's battered guitar. He'd sit on his porch and play rage rock tunes slow as love ballads, crooning about oil wars, his anger locked tight in his throat. He'd play at the creek bend where the small boys swung from the rope links over the water like pendulums, arcing through the air out of sync with his staccato rhythms. They had yet to learn the reality of coaxing corn out of soil so desiccated by chemicals, you had to use more chemicals to make anything grow. Cole sang it to them. I listened, out of sight, half because I was fascinated Cole had started caring about anything other than trucks, which he'd drawn on the back of every school assignment when we were in the 5th grade, half because hearing Cole's voice was like waking up slowly and listening to someone tell you where you are. Once last August, he stood in the creek, guitar abandoned on the bank, and called to me. "Did you come all the way here to lurk in the trees?" I startled. At school, he hardly talked to me, mostly because he hardly talked to anyone. Rumor had it there was a sign-up sheet going around for people who wanted to have a full conversation with him, but I knew that was just teasing. I knew because I was the one who'd started the rumor. I kicked off my shoes and moved in knee-deep. The shock of cold water stole my breath. Cole was dark from the sun, his yellow hair like parched grass. He cocked his head to the side like my grandpop used to do. I swear, it's a gesture taught to all farm boys who plan on growing up to make trouble. I fought to stand my ground against the current pushing at the backs of my legs. "Can't you swim?" Cole had asked. "I learned in this creek. They threw me in, and I declined the opportunity to drown." It surprised us both that we had anything left to laugh about. The price of seed had gone up that year, like it had every year. We got patented seeds that were supposed to withstand the pests, migrating from places where it was even hotter, but the patent meant we weren't allowed to store the seed for replanting. Cole shivered. The water around him rippled. "Can't you come any closer then?" I took a few hobbled steps forward, unsure whether to brave the icy temperatures. The current and his smile soon convinced me. A few days later, I was walking toward town to buy a Coke when the sound of Cole's guitar floated to me over stands of late summer witchgrass. I stopped to sit on the fence he had propped himself against and asked him if he ever watched feeds about people visiting from the other place. "You look half vanished, standing in that grass," I told him. "Ever seen them do that? Just step between worlds?" Everyone had seen those videos, so Cole only smirked like we were sharing a joke. "I saw a video of one showing up at a dentist's office. He just stood there, bug-eyed, watching a woman get her teeth cleaned." I laughed. I had seen a lot more than that. Had actually met one in person, which wasn't that common, except in big cities. But Cole was studying me like he didn't much care to talk about other people at the moment. I stared back. His county fair t-shirt was too small for him, and the date under the logo pinpointed the start of his growth spurt at 2 years earlier. Why had it taken me so long to notice? "It's hot as hell," Cole said, pulling at his shirt. "I wouldn't know personally," I joked, "but I'll take your word for it." Cole laughed, and he left his guitar right there propped in the grass so we could walk to the creek. We met at the creek all through September. After school, weekends, we sunned ourselves on gravel bed islands and hoped the younger kids didn't watch us kissing. When the rainstorms finally came and the creek swelled, our islands disappeared, so we sat in Cole's barn instead. I missed the sound of the world rushing past us, the water surging over rocks. That spring, just after my 17th birthday, the government blew up the levees protecting southern Louisiana and let the area flood so that New Orleans wouldn't. The government had stopped footing the bill for relocating people after hurricanes had destroyed so much of Florida's coastline that they had to let Disney buy out the entire state. So, just before the levees blew, the mega corporations swooped into southern Louisiana to promote their new townships and evaluate everyone for sponsored relocation. Unlike all those poor people in China's floodplains, Google was never going to knock on their doors, offering to move them to drier parts. I kept my eyes glued to the news feeds because Grandpop had warned me that our farm, so close to the Mississippi River, was in a floodplain too. At first, my dad said the government wouldn't let our land flood, that the country needed every bit of corn it could get because the heat and wind were hard at work, turning places like Nebraska and Kansas into sand dunes, destroying farmland and cattle ranches. But when the Mississippi started swelling, it was a choice between cities, with their people and businesses, and farmland. The farmland would have to go. Ours included. We heard a rumor that Microsoft Verizon, which boasted the most luxurious townships in the country, had plans to come around and evaluate everyone for relocation.
"What are they going to do with a bunch of farmers?" Cole said. "They're not going to relocate us. We don't have anything they want."
He took to hanging out with some older boys who itched to make someone else feel as desperate as they did. On a hot day at the creek, I saw one of them hold a little boy under the water until he stopped thrashing, and then let him up just in time. At night, Cole would slip away to meet up with them, in the attic room of that girl whose parents go to town most weekends, or at that guy's half-done house where the front is mostly bare plywood. Cole and his friends would get so drunk so fast, Cole told me. It was like someone was holding their heads underwater, and their day had come full cycle. Sometimes I'd go with him, and we'd all watch feeds from different townships and talk about relocating. Or Cole would play his guitar along to the radio and change all the lyrics to swear words. Sometimes he and I would lie in the attic bed together and kiss, and wonder if we should do more than kiss. But then other times he'd be far away, staring at the ceiling, barely acknowledging the brush of my kneecap.
"No one cares about this place," Cole told me. "We don't count for anything out here away from the big cities. We might as well be ghosts."
Microsoft Verizon showed up in town. They asked how many hits we usually got on our feeds. We had to tell them that we weren't blanketed with cameras like cities were, and that corn planting wasn't all that entertaining anyway. I mentioned Cole had a solo coming up at a Woodbury Prep choir competition. They weren't impressed. The Mississippi went on rising. Our days were numbered. Cole stopped playing his guitar for me. He started spending all his time with the older boys and forgot to tell me where they were going. Rare days I did run into him, he could hardly look me in the eye. I wasn't sure how to tell him that just because Microsoft Verizon saw reason to reject him didn't mean I felt the same. I holed myself up in the attic with downloaded school assignments that I ignored in favor of online stories about the other place. People were always posting their own made-up adventures with the Girl Queen, but I liked the original stories best, the ones Brixney had transcribed from Dylan's famous notebook ages ago. I read about Dylan and Hunter passing into another world and wished I could do the same. What would it be like to find a lovely land, all cool greens and blues, instead of the thermostat stuck on high? I had posters of the other place tacked up on my walls, created by artists who mixed descriptions from Dylan's stories with information we'd gotten from the people who actually lived there. Snowcaps and grasslands, swaths of forest, like farms for shade. The posters were like those old-world travel ads designed by hucksters that urged people to see the new world. But the truth was, we couldn't go to the other place. According to the stories, that other world overlapped with ours, and to visit it you had to be able to tune out our sights and sounds and tune in to the other places, an ability we had yet to evolve, except perhaps in a few rare cases like Dylan and Hunter. It wasn't that the rest of us didn't have vorpals. It was just that a vorpal strong enough to sense the other place was a rare trait, something that would crop up only when the right genes came together. So, until our DNA worked a little harder, we weren't going anywhere. Cole and I and some other kids from our valley made the 3-hour drive together to the Woodbury Prep competition. We competed a few times a year because it was our best shot at college scholarships. Cole sat in the back with the other boys and slept and listened to his headphones. But once I felt him touch my hair, and once he caught me staring at him in the rearview mirror. I remembered our days at the creek and sheltering in his barn, and got moony all over again because I don't know when to quit. In a city like Woodbury, it wasn't just our clothes that were wrong. Everyone there wore disposable stuff they could trade for the latest fashion. We carried old wireless devices, while all the other kids had flexi screens molded around their arms that chirped with constant notifications. I would stare at the ones decorated with images of teenage boys and wonder why anyone would want to wear a face on their arm. Cole had tan skin and a strong body, something you can't easily find in the city, where all the boys are espresso steamed and pale. The girls at Woodbury Prep loved it when he mentioned anything rustic, like collecting eggs from a chicken coop. They had no idea how gross fresh eggs are, usually completely covered in chicken crap. Cole was a fascinating artifact, with his cotton shirts and his farm chores back home. I guess I was fascinating too. It was fascinating how I pined for Cole across so short a distance as a coffee shop table. The Woodbury concerts are about as famous as prep school competitions get, so the coffee shop was crowded. Cole was leaning on the table, striking this strong-arm pose as if he'd studied online clothing catalogs. Really, he was trying to hide the hole in his shirt, and that's the real reason he was clutching his elbow. I was trying to get a good look at the flexi screens stuck on the arms of some nearby girls. One frowning boy seemed to dominate the displays. His shaded cheekbones and blown-back hair made me wonder if he was from the other place, but you only ever heard it said that aliens looked just like everyone else. I'd only ever met one, so I couldn't say if that was a fact. What I could say is that I wouldn't prefer to meet another one, unless he had more apologies to offer than the last one did. I kept staring at the face on the flexi screens until Cole told me, "He's in a band. Stop gawking." Why is he so upset? The boy was scowling, but still prettier than I had ever seen a boy. Cole smirked. All of his songs are about how he and his girlfriend got relocated to different townships. It's high concept. I'd heard of high concept groups. My friend Willer had a poster of one called Warehouse Burn, a group of boys who supposedly couldn't stop themselves from setting things on fire and then singing about it. Or he's suffering an allergic reaction to all that hair gel, Cole said. I glanced again at the frowning face, the hair standing practically on end. Could be he regrets signing his contract without reading that clause about eyeliner. Cole smiled. A rare sight these days. I thought about reaching for his hand, which was toying with the handle of his coffee cup. Did he still want to do things like that with me? Hold hands? Kiss? It had been a long time. I kept my hands to myself. The girls saw us looking at their screens and came over to ask Cole if black coffee was considered a food group back home. He shrugged, because we couldn't tell them that we didn't have money to order anything fancier. The girls leaned on his chair and talked up the choir competition and asked Cole if he was nervous about his solo. They started touching Cole's collar, pulling at the sleeve they didn't realize had a hidden hole. They marveled at how thick the cotton was. One girl said, "Are you like those boys in Warehouse Burn? Can't wear anything too flammable?" And winked at him. But he got all bothered because he couldn't stand to feel like anyone was making fun of him, especially when he didn't have the money to stop it, which was always. He said, "Would you please stop touching me?" "Geez, Colburn," I said once they'd hurried away. "They were just trying to flirt with you." Though really, I was glad his glower had scared them off, considering girls back home collected Cole's moods like kids collecting trading cards. I had them all, from charmingly blunt to lost in self-pity. "They can't see me sitting here with a girl already," Cole said. I again considered reaching for his hand, but he had it wrapped firmly around his coffee cup, and he wasn't even looking at me. He was watching the girls walk out of the shop, a defeated look in his eye. "Thanks for the coffee," I mumbled. He'd spent his last few dollars on me. He could have spent them on one of those other girls, but what girl wants just coffee? Besides me, I mean. He laid his hand over the tips of my fingers tentatively. "Great idea, right? Getting you coffee before the performance. Great for the throat." I shrugged. "It warms me up." But that was a lie. I was already warm, in the tips of my fingers and everywhere else. I realized the woman at the next table had been watching everything. She saw the hole in Cole's shirt too, I think, because she kept looking at his hand after she came over and he clamped it on his elbow again. I recognized her from the Microsoft Verizon interviews and went numb with surprise. What was she doing in Woodbury? First, she said to Cole, "Doesn't it feel terrible to be misunderstood?" I thought, Cole's not exactly some big question mark. He's just moody as hell. But I kept my mouth shut, and Cole couldn't figure out what to say, so the woman added, "And a guy can't help wanting what he wants." It was like a line from a play, so we didn't say anything to that either. "I'm looking forward to the concert," she said to both of us, and smiled at the rip Cole was still hiding. I realized a girl at the counter had been watching us. Even before glimpsing the red tag that circled her wrist, I knew she was from the other place. She'd been watching Cole, too. 3 years earlier, I had stood on the back staircase, looking into our kitchen, where a much older boy drank straight from the tap. He was a farmhand Grandpop had hired for the season. A creak on the stair gave me away. He turned, drew the back of his arm across his mouth. His face was exactly as I had imagined. Olive green eyes and fine eyebrows that might knit together in interest over whatever a 14-year-old girl might have to say. A streak of dirt bronzed his jaw. That afternoon, Grandpop took me to look at the collection of junkers he kept in the north pasture, and while we were out there alone said, "The people from the other place usually stick to the big cities." I knew. Mostly people spotted them sitting in cafes and parks, or driving down the street, ordinary as you please. They lived in houses and apartments and hotels, usually hosted by government officials, but sometimes by volunteer families. "But the best way to know a people," Grandpop continued, "is by studying their food." I understood what he was trying to tell me. The farmhand was from the other place. I had already guessed it. I knew about Vorpals, and that so many people from the other place had especially strong ones. They could make you do things they wanted you to do, but they never used that ability. They only ever watched us. "Why doesn't he wear the tag?" I asked. I had seen some of his kind on TV before, always with a red tag around their wrist that recorded their location and whether they came into physical contact with anyone. I never thought I'd meet one in person, not in a small town in the middle of the country. I couldn't guess how Grandpop had gotten one to come here. Grandpop reached into the nearest junker and popped open the glove compartment. Inside lay a red metal bracelet, twisted out of shape. I gaped at it.
Maybe the government doesn't need to know that a person like him is interfering with a sly fox like me,
Grandpop said. No interference, only observation, I said automatically. Grandpop's eyebrows lifted at my conviction. I mean, they never do interfere with anything. Do they? I said. It's a rule. It's why they have to wear the bracelets that tell the government what they're up to. They only watch us. They only want to learn.
Oh, I suspect they've got bigger hopes than that, Epony,
Grandpop said, gazing out over the blonde heads of cornstalks, endless and identical. I saw something in his faraway gaze, the way it lighted on the distant row of trees that marked the creek where he and everyone else had first learned to swim. I saw his throat move as he swallowed the emotion that tree line brought up, equal parts pain and possessive joy. That was the first time I got a hint it would all be gone someday. You've got bigger hopes, too, don't you, Pop? I said. You think the people from the other place can help us somehow?
They can. They have ways of making people see things differently, making people agree. They could help us fix this country.
He shut the glove compartment, hiding the red bracelet from sight.
We live how we want to. Use up resources like they'll last forever. But there's a price for everything. We'll have to pay it, one way or another. Maybe they can help us agree on how.
The farmhand used the name Hayden, which was really just my mother's maiden name. They never gave their real names. I guess because we'd have a hard time pronouncing them. His accent was subtle enough to prove our language didn't give him too much trouble, although I wondered if his Vorpal helped him understand what people meant, even when he didn't understand their words. He stayed in the spare room, where a shelf held paper copies of the Girl Queen stories that my little sisters had gotten before the movie adaptation came out. Afternoons, I'd sit on the sacred bed where Hayden slept, and I'd pull down volumes to read. I pretended if I read them enough times, I could find a way there. Hayden would go too. In the other place, there would be no worry about interfering. No government fines, no stares or whispers. He could interfere with me all he wanted. Once at dinner, I watched in awe as he shoveled down creamed corn. Was it only an illusion, or could aliens really eat solid food? The newsfeed blared from the wall monitor, coverage on the latest climate conference. Dad was ready for the usual argument over carbon taxes.
We make good money from corn shipping it around the world, he said. But who's going to buy it with a carbon tax attached?
I waited for Grandpop's usual response. My little sisters were pressed into the back of their chairs like they wished they could escape through the wooden slats. Mom passed around the bowl of blackberries like a peace offering.
There's enough demand for corn right here in the U.S.,
Grandpop said, so that he and Dad sounded just like the politicians who always popped up on the nightly news feeds.
We can't keep shipping it. How much farmland will be left in this country in 20 years when it's too hot to grow anything? Taxing carbon's the only way to restrict people from using corn to ruin our country.
No point in arguing with you on this one. Dad pointed his fork at the newsfeed playing on the screen.
They'll never agree on anything. Carbon taxes included.
But to everyone's surprise, the newsfeed wasn't going to address carbon taxes at all. The feed cut to an image of the delegates at the climate conference. The World Meteorological Organization has confirmed that allowing the other place to funnel energy from our sun's solar activity would stabilize global temperatures. What does it mean? I asked Grandpop, while everyone else sat in stunned silence.
It means the people from the other place are going to help us cool down this planet after all,
Grandpop said, and turned to Hayden, as if waiting for him to confirm it. On screen, the report continued. Scientists say a small amount of energy has been passing from our universe to the other place for decades, but world leaders will now work to find a way to increase that flow. I listened in awe. My little sisters tried to explain it to each other. They're going to fix everything! But I noticed concern creeping into Grandpop's eyes.
It'll take years to reverse the damage that's already been done to the planet, he said. Decades, maybe.
But it means no carbon taxes, I said. That's better for the country, right? For everyone. Grandpop looked to Hayden, who met Grandpop's gaze with steely stoicism.
They seem to have the delegates at the conference convinced anyway, Grandpop said.
I knew then what was really going on. The aliens had finally used their vorpals to make us all agree on how to fix our problems. During the next week, we kept the newsfeed on at all hours. The energy transfer deal, as they were calling it, made everyone happy. World leaders, senators in slick suits, hosts of talk shows. There was only the matter of finding a way to open the floodgates and let the other place swallow the heat we'd been baking in for too long. And then the answer came. We'd have to cross over into the other place. The more of us who did, the more channels would open to let solar energy slide through. But that seemed impossible. You had to have a strong vorpal to cross over, and that was all a matter of genetics. How will we manage it? I asked Grandpop one day, while we watched the news feeds together. How will people cross over into the other place?
I don't know if we will.
He kept his eyes glued on the screen, but his gaze was unfocused.
Or if we should.
What do you mean? I asked. You think it might be bad for us to go there?
Everything has its price.
And he was lost again in thought. What will it be like for us if we cross into the other place? I asked Hayden later, when I found him alone in the kitchen, marveling over a loaf of walnut cranberry bread. Will it be like it was for Dylan? Forests and rivers and palaces? He shoved the loaf of bread back onto the cutting board, like he'd been caught stealing.
You will find what he found.
I leaned on the counter and tried to read what was in his gaze. He was always so cryptic. He almost never said anything about the place he'd come from. He just referred us to Dylan's stories, as though a child's understanding was all we needed. Maybe he thought he couldn't explain it any better. And if we don't want to go in the end, will you make us? I asked.
We will only do what you want us to do.
But you can change what we want, can't you? He looked away.
No, we can't change you, only influence you.
The dim twilight made him beautiful in a blown glass way that my 17-year-old self now knows could never rival Cole's rugged charm. I leaned closer, glad he didn't have a tag and I didn't have a flexi screen, that no record would show if I reached out and touched him. But he still seemed impossibly far away. I had seen the old video of Brixney and Michael. I knew I could as easy as not put my hand right through him. It wasn't fair for him to be so beautiful and not beautiful at the same time. I nudged the bread back toward him. Is there anything solid in your world?
Much of it is solid. We just interact with things a little differently than you do.
And as he was talking, I saw in his mouth a single star resting in the entry to his throat. But it was not a star. It was a tiny globe of light he had drawn in with his breath, and now he pushed it out so that it floated away like a bubble. I touched his shoulder. This isn't who you really are.
A person can be many things.
The Microsoft Verizon rep found us after the competition, while Cole was still holed up in the sound booth because he hadn't placed and wasn't going to get any scholarship. I was camped outside the door, silently willing him to get over it. Silent, because there was nothing to say. The rep had another line for us, which Cole had to hear through the sound booth door. Those levies can go to hell. How'd you like to live in a premier township? It was followed by the click of the door unlocking. She was going to make me and Cole high concept. Our families and 10 others in the floodplain would move into the best township in the country and wouldn't pay a cent for anything. She talked about our energy, about this tension she sensed between us. But I knew it wasn't really about energy or tension. It was about the coffee shop and how girls were drawn to Cole like moths to a flame. Cole kept smirking at me on the drive home and asking,
"What do you think she has in mind?"
Like he wasn't sure yet he wanted to do it, even though his eyes gleamed with triumph. At first, I cared only that he was happy again, that he leaned close to talk to me, put his chin on my shoulder as though he did it every day. But then I thought about that new band that refused to leave Disney World and showed up at random places in the park to play impromptu concerts. It was dumb, because everyone knew Disney had to be in on it, or else the band would have gotten kicked out forever ago. I hoped Microsoft Verizon had better ideas than that for our concept. It turned out they did. The rep stood in my kitchen the next day and told our parents she was going to take advantage of the fact that I'd hardly ever been on camera and would be relatively easy to scrub from the web. "Teen love is about wanting what you can't have," she said, "what you shouldn't have." My dad adopted Grandpop's rumbling drawl.
"Just what are you proposing?"
"Cole's a small-town charmer. Any girl would want him," the rep said, and Cole pressed himself into the kitchen wall so that I half expected he'd leave a dent. "But the only girl he wants is the one he can't have. His cousin." "But I'm not his cousin," I said stupidly. She had a stage smile to match all those lines, broad and disarming. "Which is why there's no reason for you to object, Epony." It took a moment to sink in, and then the air went heavy as lead. I would pretend to be Cole's cousin, and he would pretend to be in love with me. It seemed more gross than sexy. But she was right about forbidden love. The girls I knew couldn't get enough of it. That's why they all had those warehouse burn pyromaniacs plastered on their arms and t-shirts. My parents exchanged grimaces across the table. Cole's parents started sputtering about small-town stereotypes, while Cole himself looked like he'd just swallowed the world's bitterest medicine. In the next room, my sisters had the wall monitor set to Celebrity Feed. The male lead in the latest Girl Queen movie, the 10th movie in the series, was taking a ribbing from the host, who kept insisting he must be from the other place.
"How else can one boy be every girl's dream? You're some kind of illusion. You're on another plane of existence."
The star played at being bashful and laughed the question off.
No, I'm solid through and through."
I suddenly had an image of Grandpop in his cracked leather chair, narrowing his eyes at the far end of his pipe.
"Exactly when did the existence of an alternate universe become a mundane thought? It doesn't seem normal not to put up a fuss."
And then moving his narrowed gaze to me, as if he suspected I had the answer. I did have the answer later, after years of thinking about it. The aliens had a special ability to influence the way we felt about them, to manipulate our emotions. Those Vorpals. It was why they inspired only fascination and not fear. Hundreds of them had positioned themselves in the most concentrated parts of our country. Thousands had gotten themselves into the most important areas of the world. They were courting governments and the public alike. Their Vorpals made everyone love them, even while they remained mysterious to us. Or did we love them because they remained mysterious? I turned back to the kitchen and said over the escalating noise, "We're not going to do it." Cole's head snapped up, and he hit me with a glare as cold as creek water. It went straight to my heart. At least now I knew his true feelings on the subject. He was in, no matter what he had to pretend about, and he wouldn't take to me screwing it all up. The silence pressed in on me. I let my own silence press back. Then I said, "We'll do it like this. Cole's in love with me." I gave him a searching look. He dropped his gaze to the scuffed floorboards. And I want him too, but the reason we can't have each other is that I'm from the other place. The rep had a real smile after all, a smug sort of smirk that left something gnawing at my stomach. We packed up the house in a week. My sisters said goodbye to every shelf, window, and baseboard, as if they believed the new townhouse in Chicago wouldn't have such things. I cared more about Grandpop's junkers, and spent a couple days mourning with each one in turn. Friday, my parents went off to auction animals and furniture, and to trade information with the other families who were moving too. I couldn't take one more snicker from Willer or any of my other friends about my upcoming metamorphosis, so I stayed home. I sat in the empty room where Hayden had slept the summer I was 14, the summer before Grandpop had gotten cancer. I thought of the time Hayden had come in to find me reading on his bed. Is the other place really like this? I'd showed him the book cover of Dylan's stories, 2 boys running through the forest toward a palace in a clearing, on the verge of discovery. The story within told of strange creatures that grew and shrank at will, of a girl queen who glowed with magic, of trees that formed doorways into secret spaces. Is it so like a fairy tale? Hayden's face darkened. The little bedroom was full of his presence, and I thought I might be sensing his vorpal, the way you sense rather than hear the sound of a cat's tail brushing over floorboards. I wished he would sit on the bed next to me, and then he did. "You've become enamored with us," he said, "but what you know of us is only what you've invented, only an illusion." I leaned against him, and this time I knew my own vorpal was there too, right alongside his. The illusion is the part we like best. They scrubbed me from the web, every last image of me, my entire online profile. It depressed me that it was so easy to do. I'd never had a solo in any choir competition, never been named queen at the county fair. I was the one turning away from the camera while everyone showed off blue ribbons at the poultry show, the girl huddled under a sweatshirt at the Friday night bonfire. It was easy to convince people to crop me from their online photos, to delete me from their social media pages. Afterward, it felt like not existing. I couldn't even walk into a store and buy a pop. Cole would have to come in with me so the system could scan his image and charge the Coke to his online account. They messed with Cole's profile, too, changing his name from Colburn and adding photos of him as a doting older brother and protector of small animals. His new outfits were a farce of a farm boy's wardrobe. White t-shirts and blue jeans, thin enough you could almost see through them. Soft boots that laced halfway to the knee and were good only for padding through coffee houses and carpeted lofts. I wore black. Always black. A ghost in negative. We drove out to Chicago to meet our producer, who came packaged with a songwriter barely older than me and Cole. The songwriter had played the bass in a high-concept band that had fizzled out a year ago when it was revealed that the members weren't actually dying of a solar allergy.
"His concept's dead," the producer told us by way of introduction, "but his songs are hot, melodic as heck."
The songwriter seemed self-conscious only about not having been the front man.
"The bass is the gateway that links the guitar with the drums," he said in his defense.
The producer was in his 40s and too well-fed and a little bit manic. He took us down to his basement studio, which was papered with burger ads featuring supermodels. I was hungry the whole time we were down there. It had been months since I'd tasted beef. I mean, real beef, not the substitute. He played some different beats for me and Cole and asked for our opinion, and then told us which one he'd already picked out.
"I want it to be effing ethereal,"
he said, smoothing his paper-thin shirt over his paunch.
"Dreamy synths like fireflies on helium."
I had no idea what he was talking about. Could music even sound like that? He must have thought it was his euphemism that had unsettled me, because he explained,
"I'm trying to cut down on swearing. For the kids," and gestured vaguely at the models and the posters.
He and the songwriter had already scribbled some lyrics on a paper placemat.
"This is the story."
The producer directed his acetone breath at me.
"Cole's not supposed to get involved with your type. It's against the law, but he can't help himself. And you can do what you want with him, can't you? Because your powers of persuasion are sort of superhuman. You're Vorpal, yes? So here we go. The first part is Cole's, and the second is Epine's."
The songwriter read the lyrics off in a monotone.
"I know what you are, how you watch me. If I go too far, will you stop me?"
"Effin' ethereal,"
the producer cut in to remind us.
"I know what they say, how they watch me. If I want your heart, can they stop me? They won't understand this. They can't come between us."
I stole a glance at Cole. He raised his eyebrows at me. I remembered laughing in the creek together, and then quickly pushed the thought away. The creek was just another current in a morass of currents now.
"Right, let's try it in the booth,"
the producer said, and handed the paper placemat to Cole.
"Sing it like a girl would, Cole. Like a sweet effing innocent girl."
While they mixed the final track, we went to a movieplex to watch Girl Queen movies. We rented a space that was nothing but a shelf on a stack of shelves, facing a huge screen. Footrests rose up from the floor. Pops rolled down from a fridge hatch. On screen, a river pooled around a city of sun-dazzled glass, and an actor portraying Dylan called a silvery creature out of the water. It was the 7th Girl Queen movie in a row we had watched. "Watch out for the stinger!" I hollered at the screen, because I knew this movie by heart. It was based on a popular story someone had posted online about Dylan's adventures with the Girl Queen and her brother. There was no telling if it had gotten the look of the other place right, but it seemed close enough to what Dylan had described in his own stories, so I was willing to go along for the ride. During a lull in the action, Cole told me,
"They shouldn't have turned your vocals down on the chorus. I was drowning you out."
"We aliens don't like to be loud," I said, poking him in the ribs. "We're a shy bunch. We're really only here to make humans like you sound better."
"Seriously, though,"
Cole said. I shook my head. "It's your voice that's good. They'll have to do all that thickening with mine. I never heard you sing so high."
"Sounded like a mosquito in heat."
He climbed up on the back of the seat and popped open the fridge hatch to use as a headrest. The chemical smell of refrigerant reminded me of ice cream bars and frozen lemonade.
"Ethereal, my ass."
"Looks ethereal from this angle," I joked, and prodded him so he leaped off the chair back. He dropped into the seat and leaned against me.
"If I had known they were going to try to turn me half into a girl, I might not have done this."
"Yes, you would have." I slipped an arm around his shoulders, praying he wouldn't pull away. My heartbeat was an overproduced version of itself, all bass notes. Those tween girls like the non-threatening brand of angst. Get used to it, girly boy. He laced his fingers through mine so that his arm was across his chest.
"Those lyrics."
He grimaced at the distant movie screen.
"I hate acting that way around you."
I stiffened. "Like you're in love with me?"
"No, like I can't do anything about it."
The light from the screen lent his face an early morning, dirt-streaked window kind of glow. "You can do something about it." I brushed my chin against his shoulder. He shifted in his seat so that I thought maybe I was bothering him. But then he turned and kissed me, and the sound of river water from the movie reminded me of our islands in the creek. Then he jerked away, scowled at the armrest.
"You like doing any of this?"
"Kissing you?" I almost laughed. Was there some other reason to do it?
"No. I mean my non-threatening high notes."
He flopped back in his seat.
"And these pants that are about 3 sizes too small."
I touched the back of his shoulder, trying to coax him closer again. "It's what everybody wears." He reached to pull his guitar out from under his seat.
"Never mind."
He started strumming, and that was the end of that. We ordered hot dogs and a case of designer candy that made smoke pour out of our mouths. Cole riffed on his guitar, despite protests from the other shelves.
I've tasted sorrow, salt, and sickly sweets, he sang. Hate it all, but a boy's gotta eat.
I passed in and out of sleep for the remainder of the movie. I kept seeing my kitchen wallpaper in the Girl Queen's palace, faded and curling. Cole's hen scrambling for the fence line. In the dark nighttime scenes when blue light washed over us, I pretended the world was flooding, and I was safe up on a high shelf with Cole and candy, and pretended that was enough.
Will they buy it?
Cole asked, his thumb hitting an errant note that jolted me out of dreaming. He meant the girls, the tweens with their lust for high-con. Would they buy that I was an alien? That he was in love with me? That was what he cared about. What kept his mind occupied even while he kissed me, so that he could hardly remember to enjoy it. His shrill tone set my teeth on edge. They'll eat you up. We stayed at the movieplex all night, and into the following day, just watched movie after movie, and dozed during the boring parts, and tried to remember if we existed beyond our shelf. I came to the conclusion that we kind of didn't. The context for every moment of our lives was gone, underwater, me with no profile, like some mythical creature exiled from Atlantis. After they'd finished the track, they had us come down and listen to it, and I forgot it was me singing, and got goosebumps from the shimmering synths and the bass notes like a heartbeat. Cole's voice was a prepubescent version of itself, and so sweet I could almost cry. Effing ethereal, after all. The plan was that when the single hit the airwaves, every flexi screen within range of a signal would light up with an image of Cole's haunted expression. Anyone who clicked through to the webpage would discover a forlorn Cole reaching for me as I faded away. Below the image, a single line of text. They won't understand this. It was almost the exact pose from that most viral of ancient feeds, the moment Michael faded away from Brixney. Despite what the lyrics said, everyone would understand it. I was wheedling the guy at the grocery counter to let me take some tomatoes and a head of lettuce when the single dropped. His flexi screen lit up. He tapped on it in a way he thought was discreet, arm below the counter. His gaze went to my wrists and found no screen or red bracelet. Wide-eyed, he waved me on. I thought, see? Who needs credits? On my way home, past house fronts painted white against the early summer heat, it hit me. I was an alien now. I started running. Cole was fidgeting in the entryway of my parents' premier townhouse, his boots smearing dirt on the new white premier tiles. I pointed at the brand-new flexi screen on his arm, which was spouting our single. Take it off! What are you thinking? Before they get here! He jolted, tugged it off, then paused, the music echoing, his screen still lit up with the image of his own face.
Wait, who's they?
I don't know. They. People. Fans. Turn it off. They can track your location. Cole swiped at the screen, and our singing stopped. We looked around. We waited. I kept staring at the door.
Should we barricade it?
Cole asked. He cracked a smile. I chucked the lettuce at him. Turn it back on. I nodded at his screen. He made a swipe, tapped through to our website.
687 subscribers.
His face went premier white. The tomato slipped out of my grip. Turn it back off. A sound of thunder on the stairs, and then my sisters barreled into the room. Come see, you're on Celebrifeed. I stamped up after them on shaky legs.
Stop running,
my dad called from the kitchen.
It's hot enough in here and the AC won't turn up.
Dad, I said.
Did you get the groceries?
He called. Dad!
What?
He poked his head in. The wall monitor caught his eye. There was the image from our website, large as life on the screen.
Well, what in the world? I never saw a boy's hair look like that.
He turned his gaze to Cole's yellow thatch. Nothing like the gelled nest of hair on screen. Are you going to get in trouble? My younger sister asked.
For what?
Cole said. She sidled up to him, as eager to bask in his annoyance as in any other form of his attention. For interfering with an alien.
She's not an alien. She's your sister,
Dad said, and slumped back to the kitchen. Besides, she doesn't have a red bracelet, my other sister said. She's supposed to have ditched it. How will they know anyone's interfering with her? They'll know from Celebrifeed. Cole scooted away to leave them to their shrill bickering. Are we going to get in trouble for this? I murmured to him.
In trouble with who?
The FBI or someone.
The FBI won't believe that an alien could want a human. Aliens and humans aren't even the same species. Only high-con fans believe crap like this.
He was right. I knew it firsthand. Aliens didn't fall in love with silly 14-year-old girls, or even glammed-up 17-year-old girls. The aliens, then. They'll be mad. They don't like to draw attention to themselves.
If they didn't want attention, they wouldn't wear those bright red bracelets.
They have to. My younger sister had inched close again and stood inspecting the way Cole's sweat-dampened clothes stuck to him. The government said so. Cole went to the AC and tried to override the peak usage sensor.
Anyway, the aliens can just go ahead and kiss it. They're not the ones whose egg is in the frying pan.
For the next few days, Celebrifeed cycled our photo through 100 times, each with a different headline. Close encounter leads to illegal love.
Vorpal abuse. He's under her spell.
Does she have a tail? Cole and I hid out in the township and let our mystique build. Then we flew out to LA, city of camera angles. I found out what heat was. The heat of the desert, the press of the crowds, heat from the tailpipes and the gleaming hoods of cars. The heat from Cole, coming close for a kiss in direct sight of a street lamp camera. The burn of humiliation at realizing he was only mooning over me because he'd spotted a line of camera lenses embedded in a shop awning. It was the same game over and over. Pull close, pull away, disappear around a corner into a waiting car to leave Cole feigning heartbreak. All for the cameras, for the act. By the third week, when the cat and mouse thing started to get old, our new fans made it easy for us to evolve our act. When Cole went out, they'd swarm him like flies. I'd appear at the right moment, cutting a wide swath through the frightened crowd. "Is she really?" they'd whisper, or "Save him from her." Later, Cole would get me alone with the cameras and try to tell me he didn't want those other girls. I'd tell him he should be with them, that it'd be better for him. A few tears on my part, and then I'd leave. We kept it short. We always kept it short. They couldn't get enough. When the temperature soared, the rolling blackouts were a relief. The power to the city's cameras went out, giving Cole an excuse to be offline for a couple of days. He ditched his flexi screen, so no one could track him, and we drove out to Santa Monica. From Ocean Avenue, we took in the sight of the storm-wrecked pier still in splinters, the Ferris wheel motionless above the dark water, like a giant eye peering over the edge of an abyss.
Don't care how they see you. I'll never leave you.
I'll keep us together, stay with you forever. Cole and I took turns singing over a thumping beat, crouched in an abandoned warehouse whose cameras couldn't be traced, the same building Warehouse Burn often used, according to our producer.
Stay with you forever, Cole whispered into my ear, or at least until I get feeling back in my legs.
He shifted into an easier crouch, flashed me a quick smile. I hoped the mic hadn't picked up his joke. Our producer stood out of sight, flapping his arms at us and mouthing,
"More effing intensity."
"Stay with you forever," I belted. Then the breakaway wall crashed in, and I slipped out of sight, leaving Cole to gape at vaguely threatening forms. The dark, hulking men could have been FBI or some kind of alien task force, but were really day laborers in black turtlenecks. The cameras were dead on cue. The producer checked his flexi screen and reported that we were already number 43 on Feedbin.
"Intense as heck,"
the producer said, of either our performance or the ad revenue. 43 didn't sound great to me, but he seemed confident we'd topple the teen mini-shows and the clips of skateboard tricks. I figured he knew better than I did. He pointed a thick finger at Cole.
We need to talk before you go.
I started to follow them, but the producer waved me away.
No, Eponine, just Cole. Vocal issues, he said, pointing to his throat. Don't worry about it. Separate cars out of here, and if you two are going to meet up later, for F's sake, make sure you've disabled any cameras. You're completely offline until prime time.
I swiped sheetrock dust from my shoulders and shook it out of my hair. Cole was standing frozen, a spray of white dust turning half his face pale. I gave him a questioning look.
Cole, did you hear me?
The edge in the producer's voice made me look up. Cole snapped out of whatever spell had held him, jerked his gaze away from me.
Yeah, he answered, alone and miserable and crying into a camera lens at 8 o'clock tonight.
I rode to my hotel. The driver turned the car radio with his flexi screen, since I didn't have my own. All the songs were the same anyway. Girls singing about falling asleep in their party clothes, about glamming up their profiles. Boys singing about cycling through disposable shirts, about their screens too tight on their arms. Lyrics about things I'd never experienced and didn't understand. They faked alien accents, something I'd gotten good at in the last couple of weeks, or they'd affect drunkenness and slur their lyrics. The song would build to a climax. There'd be that moment, that one bit of emotion I could grab onto, and back to talk of hairstyles and camping out on high-speed trains. Not like when Cole sang. When he sang a song he wrote, anyway. The whole thing so charged through with feeling, the emotion so palpable it made ladders in the air. One day, I was going to reach out and touch them, and climb up to somewhere. At the camera-free suite I'd come to call home, it was a ration day. No air conditioning. The balcony doors let in smog and not much else. The same news story kept looping on the wall monitor. The task force will attempt to train people with strong vorpals to cross into the other place, which will strengthen the link that allows solar energy to flow into the alternate universe. I'd already heard all about it. Already wondered how they'd find anyone with a vorpal strong enough to sense the other place. They'd been trying for years now. I switched it off. Cole came in. He had his own apartment, where we sometimes moped together for the cameras, but we could only drop the act here in my suite. He dragged out the battered guitar he kept stashed there, clipped a guitar string, and used it to override the AC controls. We collapsed in front of the AC unit and lay where we had fallen, looking like a fashion spread of third-world heat casualties.
I've lived L.A. by camera light,
Cole sang lazily, strumming his guitar.
Swelter days, blackout nights.
Then his fingers left the guitar strings and trailed to my arm, my hair. He traced circles and lines on my neck as though mimicking some foreign and complicated pattern. My heart tried to follow it, surging in time with his movements. When he leaned in for a kiss, I reminded him there weren't any cameras around. He reminded me not to be an ass. We added a little more heat to the world. Until Cole stopped mid-kiss, pulled away as usual, that defeated look coming into his eye again. Same as when we played for the cameras. It had gotten to where I couldn't tell when that look wasn't real. "I'm not actually an alien," I told him. "I've got all the right anatomy and everything." He didn't laugh.
They didn't go for your idea.
"What idea? The thing where we run away together?" I tried to angle myself close to him again, missing the weight of his arm around me. "Preferably to Europe. I could use a vacation from this place." He rolled onto his feet, fiddled with the AC knob again.
"Yeah, I just said they didn't go for it."
I huddled on the couch, stung. "Is that what you and the producer were talking about? Did you tell him London is completely blanketed with lenses? All those old surveillance cameras are connected to the internet now."
They said it would cut all the tension we've been building.
I sat up. "Who's they?"
"Producer. Rep."
"She's in town? When did you talk to her?" I leaned forward until I could put my hand on his back. What if, we can't get passports? Nobody can get entry to England right now, and then we have to get smuggled in. He turned to face me.
We don't have a lot of choice here. If they don't want to do it, we can't do it.
His arms were trembling. What wasn't he saying? He pushed my hair behind my ear. I ran my fingers over his arm, inviting him closer, but he didn't budge. I thought for a moment he was about to confess something. His expression was so rabbit-scared.
I'm sorry,
he said. This whole thing was our idea to start with, I said. My idea.
And it's their money.
I didn't know you had so much loyalty to Microsoft Verizon, I said sourly. He twitched. The floor was suddenly so fascinating that he couldn't look me in the eye.
It's their townhouses our families are living in case you forgot.
I didn't. He let his shirt balloon around him, with cold air from the unit.
That's how it works, Epiphany. Someone else sets the price and we pay it. Seed Bank, the governor with his damn levies. That's how it always works.
He left to go down to find some fans who could crowd out his thoughts, while I watched his feed on the wall monitor. At 8, I showed up at his place, right on schedule. I knew what scene I'd find on the other side of his door. Cole, crushed and lonely, afraid we'd never be together because the FBI was watching us now. They weren't really watching us, but our fans believed what they wanted to believe. What's next? I wondered, while I waited for him to answer the door. We'd given our fans forbidden romance, underage lovers, police in pursuit, and we were only a month into the act. What else would we have to do to hold their interest? Cole yanked the door open, surprise registering on his face. Not the good kind of surprise. Not relief. A moment of confusion on my part while I waited for an embrace that didn't come. And then I saw her and thought, those bastards.
It's better this way, Cole said. Better for you.
Then he stepped close enough that I could see the transparent mic clipped under his chin.
They're watching us,
he said in a stage whisper. I pulled out of his grip, stumbled back. What the hell? Nobody had told me about this new direction. Why hadn't they told me? Because they wanted this reaction. Genuine shock, hurt, humiliation. I fled down the hallway, downstairs. I heard him loping after me in his soft boots, shouting some line they'd fed him. I barreled down the street and finally into a cafe. Every table monitor was playing Cole's feed. He was already back inside his air-conditioned den, reveling in the new girl's method of consoling him. Fake kissing is still real kissing, I shouted at the screens. I shot back out into the street. The late-night traffic crawled past, weary drivers peering out at the girl with bare arms and tear-streaked face. The thrum of idling engines was nauseating, the streetlights sad, dirty yellow. Visions flicked through my head of Hayden. He'd sat next to me on the bed while I was reading, and I'd leaned into him, thinking he might kiss me. I pictured now the puzzled tilt of his head.
I couldn't ever feel that way about you, he'd said. Don't you know? The way you look, the way you are, it's nothing like what I could ever want.
It was the last time I'd seen him. Even now, I could feel the stifling heat of the attic room that had been my hideout those final sweltering weeks of September. One of the cars in the line of crawling traffic had stopped altogether. The driver craned her neck to get a good look at me. A horn blared. The woman went on staring. Had she seen Cole's feed? She was too old to care about Hycon. Her gaze was fascinated, piercing. Her arm, resting on the steering wheel, was encircled with a red bracelet. When I was 15, cancer made Grandpop's skin dull, his eyes bleary. I felt like I was always seeing him through fogged glass in those days. His hair grew in patches, I could never get a good look at him. He cowered. I didn't realize it was indecision weighing on him. The cancer was just one more stone on the scale. Grandpop showed me a map with a red scrawl encircling a large area of Washington state, including the Cascadia parks.
Almost time for me to head out.
I slumped in the back seat of one of his junkers, legs dangling out in the long grass. Why are you going? It was my way of saying, don't. The insects buzzed, as if to lend sound to Grandpop's wry smile.
The world has already started saying its goodbye. Time I caught up.
My heart crumpled.
I won't be able to come back to you.
He squeezed my chin. The bugs made the evening air sizzle.
Maybe someday you'll follow me.
I looked up finally, unsure of what he meant. But the two of us only ever exchanged questions, never answers. I tried to hand him the map, but he pushed it back toward me, and this time I noted the million red dots concentrated mostly in the circle he had drawn, pinpointing locations. Locations of what? Before I could ask him about it, he loaded his old, failing body into the most serviceable junker. A minute later, it coughed away down the road. For 2 days after I saw Cole kissing someone else, I refused all calls. Cole's, the producers, the reps. I think our songwriter even tried once. I lived off room service and watched news feeds and willed my heart to stop sinking like a stone. I tried to put it all together. Grandpop's map with the red dots, and the way people from the other place sometimes stared at me, on the street, and in the coffee shop in Woodbury, where I'd thought the alien there was staring at Cole. I watched Cole's feed like all his other fans did, admired the clever love triangle they'd set up, even while I fumed over the betrayal. I decided it was time to get back to playing my own game. They paid the new girl to go in and out of grocery stores, while Cole pined for her near the cart return. The two of them were supposed to be fighting. Over me, I suppose. Sometimes when she walked out, he looked at her like he was missing something, and she had it in her shopping bag. I didn't think he was in love with her. In fact, I happened to know that he hated that pouty city look, the fake needle marks, the black smudged under eyes. But there were a lot of things missing in Cole's life, and it was probably easier for him if he could put them all in one bag. I ambushed Cole while they had an actual cameraman camped in view of the fluorescent storefront of the grocery store. Cole was stunned to see me, in a 5 million volt stun gun kind of way.
What are you?
He sputtered.
Are you okay?
I waved away his "we shouldn't be meeting like this, but I'm so glad to see you" attempt. I have to talk to you. I'm going back.
Back?
Home. He shook his head, genuinely confused. Home was underwater, along with busted-up levees. But I wasn't talking about home. I was playing for the cameras. I was giving us a way out. I'm going to the other place, I said. Cole shrank back, surprised. I almost reached for him. Even now, hurt as I was, I felt he was a magnet and I was metal. I want you to come with me, I said, and almost grimaced at how my voice cracked.
How can I? What are you?
I'm leaving tomorrow morning. Leaving L.A., even if you don't come with me. Quitting this act. He pulled me aside, as if the cameraman couldn't change angles.
What are you talking about?
I won't do this anymore. I lowered my voice to a tone I hoped his mic wouldn't pick up. I know you hate it too. Come with me. I touched his arm, slid my hand down to twine my fingertips in his. I knew he wanted to say it. Come with you where, exactly? He didn't believe, of course, that we could go to the other place. But he couldn't break the act while he was wearing a microphone and the cameraman was behind my shoulder. He wouldn't go that far off script. And I hardly knew myself how serious I was. I wanted to leave L.A. and leave the act. Something inside me stirred when I thought about trying to cross into the other place. But was it adrenaline? Or my Vorpal, long dormant and finally coming to life? I tried to find it, tried to reach out with it and make Cole listen to me. I slipped Grandpop's old map into Cole's hand. "There's a train. Tomorrow morning." Cole glanced at the map and thrust it into his pocket before the camera could get a good view of it.
"What the hell is this all about?"
I glanced through the window at rows and rows of boxed food, rice and pasta and powdered salty cheese mix. Cole's other girl was there, oblivious to what was happening out on the sidewalk. She was scrutinizing a package of instant rice. I remembered Grandpop's comment about knowing a people by learning about their food. I imagined the girl as a student of the L.A. species, and almost laughed. Funny how a person's jokes can outlast him. Cole was waiting for me to say something. I touched his hand again. "Just come with me."
"You know I can't."
Was he saying it for the cameras, because he couldn't cross into the other place? Or was he saying it for me, because he wouldn't leave the act? Nothing in his gaze would tell me. I pulled my elbow out of his grip and strode away. The Microsoft Verizon rep was waiting in my hotel room when I got back. Her smile had widened into a shark's grin. "You've decided to go off script," she said. The wall monitor was turned to Cole's feed, as always. He was alone in his kitchen with a stack of canned black beans and his guitar. I spent a few moments listening to the low tone of his song, letting his voice fill up the dim space of my hotel room.
"If the world is a creek bend, you're my city. It's pretty to pretend. Then it ends."
I turned to the rep, my insides full of daggers. "Remember, I wrote the script in the first place, and Microsoft Verizon financed it. Your whole act." She smiled at the pleasantly poignant sight of Cole singing to his empty kitchen. "I wonder where your parents are going to live after you and Cole have run away together." I imagined my sisters sighing over Cole's feed, urging him to come back to me. Would they be surprised if I disappeared? They might believe I had been an alien all along, and then someday, a month or a year from now, they'd look up from the screen and say, "Wait, wasn't she just our sister?" "You know Cole's not going to come with me." The words tasted bitter in my mouth. "He can stay and play out the act as the jilted lover. I'm sure his fans will love it." "And that's what you want? To leave Cole?" She frowned down at my belongings scattered on the coffee table. Some crumpled candy wrappers, an envelope that had once held elixir guitar strings, a book of Girl Queen stories. "I think I've come to know you better than that." She touched the elixir envelope, and I cringed. I debated telling her that I'd only saved Cole's trash because he'd scribbled lyrics on it that I couldn't bear to throw out. The rep laughed. "I think I had you figured out from the beginning. That's my job, figuring people out." "Then you knew from the beginning I didn't want this as much as Cole wanted it." That day in my kitchen came back to me, the cold water glare from Cole, and the rep looking on with her smug smile. "That's why you set this up the way you did, isn't it? Giving us that terrible idea in the beginning about us pretending to be cousins. Letting me think that our alien act was really my idea, when that's what you were hoping for all along." She didn't deny it. She seemed almost pleased I had figured her out, happy I had become an apprentice to her art. I crossed my arms to try to stop my trembling. "Well, now Cole can go on just as well without me." It hurt me to say it, but I had to admit it. Cole wouldn't leave with me. He'd stay and play the game. "You made sure of that. You roped in that girl so you could keep the act going even if I left it." I started toward the door, but she angled herself to block me. "Isn't that why you chose the role you did? So you could give Cole a good reason to reject you?" I shook my head, mired in confusion. "You knew Cole wouldn't stay with his small-town girlfriend," she explained. Something in my stomach bucked, but my anger was like sand running through a sieve. "You don't know anything about us," I said weakly. "You're like those high-con fans who trust everything that comes through a camera lens." I know what I saw on Cole's face when he looked at those girls in the coffee shop in Woodbury. She leaned closer. "Your hold on him might be strong, but it's not strong enough. Not when you remind him of everything he wants to leave behind." My insides turned molten. I smelled the sharp smell of black coffee, felt Cole's fingertips touching mine, saw that hole in his shirt, the only thing that kept him from walking out with those girls, the only thing that kept him stuck, sitting there with me. I ducked around her and left to find Cole. He'd gotten halfway to my hotel by the time I caught up to him on the street. His flexi screen was gone, and so was the cameraman. He ducked into an alley and motioned for me to follow him, away from the street cameras. I turned the corner and ran right into him. He caught my wrists, my freakish bare wrists, with no screen and no red tag. No way to tap into my credits in a store, no profile to prove my identity. I had come all the way to the camera capital of the country to be invisible.
"They wouldn't let me tell you about her,"
he said, his eyes wide and mournful. "You don't have to go along with it." He didn't say anything to that. I felt the slow, weak pulse of his heart, the tepid blood ebbing through it. Things impossible to feel. But I felt them. Was it my own pulse, beating against his fingers wrapped around my wrists? I felt his vorpal, withering in the smoggy heat. I knew the feeling well. I had felt it before, a vibration on his skin. I'd heard it, in his music, that hum beneath his voice that made the air rise. How could I have not recognized it before? All along, I'd felt the pull of his vorpal on mine, but I'd never known it until now. And I knew something more. My vorpal was stronger than his.
"You can't leave."
He pulled my arms against his chest, against his slow-beating heart.
"You don't have a profile. How are you going to live? Making wildflower salads in the park?"
"Come and see." He pushed away from me.
"And our families will do what exactly? Live on Microsoft Verizon's generosity?" He gave a derisive laugh. "We've really screwed this up, haven't we?"
His hollow voice made me sick with dread. I sank back against the cold metal of a dumpster. "We shouldn't have done any of it in the first place." Cole's expression darkened.
"We had to. What else were we supposed to do? We were nobodies. The state flooded our whole town to save cities better than ours."
"And to save people better than us?" I asked, because I knew that was how he felt. "Funny how it works. They put a camera on you, and suddenly you exist." I glared at him, daring him to deny he believed that. He pulled at the neck of his thin shirt, as if stifled by the rotten alley air.
"This whole act was your idea in the first place. I went along with the script you wanted."
My stomach churned. I could convince him to come with me without saying a word.